Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gmetrics webinar. This is actually the first Gmetrics webinar of 2025. I'm so excited and glad to have you all here. If someone wouldn't mind just letting me know that you can hear me in the chat, I would greatly appreciate it. All right. Are you all able to hear me in the chat? Um, let's see. Are the attendees able to hear me? We can. Thank you so much, Deborah. Thank you so much. All right, we'll give one more minute for anyone else to come in, and then we will go ahead and get started. Oh, thank you so much for that, Deborah. Thank you for that, and I will look into that right now. All right. All right. Let's go ahead and get started. Again, thank you all for joining us for the first Gmetrics webinar of 2025. I'm so glad to be back with you. Our webinar today is going to be on reports, and I'm going to show you the Gmetrics reporting system so that you are able to utilize those in your classroom. So the first thing, before we get started, I will let you know at the top on the right-hand part of your screen, there is a square, the little chat-like box, and it has a question mark in it. Any questions that you have as we go through the webinar, please feel free to put those questions in that box. And what's going to happen is I have two amazing guys from the Gmetrics support team that are helping me, and they're going to be helping me to answer questions, and I will also be answering your questions live. We are also going to have some links for you to utilize in regards to reports so that you can have the information that is shared today so that you can have it at your fingertips at any time. If you look next to the questions, there's a portion that says materials. And within materials, what I've put the information for you to connect with us as you see on the screen here, but I've also put a PDF document, a quick start guide to reports. In that guide, it explains the Gmetrics reports. It tells you how to access Gmetrics reports, and it gives you some amazing tips on how to utilize the information in those reports. What we will also be doing, I do understand that you cannot write in the chat, but we can work with that. We will just use questions for you all. And in the chat, what we're going to do is we're going to put links to our Gmetrics reports page that has housed within our Gmetrics knowledge base. And also within that knowledge base, I'm going to go ahead and pull that up so that you can see that. Also within our Gmetrics knowledge base at gmetrics.net, it's support.gmetrics.net, you are going to find an extensive list of articles to help you within your classroom. You will find information on how to build your classroom. And with this information, it comes with a video. And as many of our knowledge-based articles do, a video with, and then step-by-step instructions with pictures on how to utilize this article and how to build those reports. Build those classrooms. And then we also have our reports article here. And you can do a search. You can go to reports, and this is further going to explain reports, and it's going to have detailed information and pictures. What you're also able to do on the Gmetrics support site is you're going to be able to create a support ticket. So if you have any questions or if you have anything that you're trying to do, say for instance, accessibility features. We do offer accessibility features on the Gmetrics platform. So you can find articles about that here and how to add those accessibility features for your students. Many of you might be using Adobe and Microsoft. We have a section dedicated to Adobe and Microsoft. All right, we have a complete section dedicated to Adobe and Microsoft so that you can utilize that information to ensure that your students are getting the most from Gmetrics. And if you need support, you can put a support ticket in and you are able to create a support ticket. And what they will do, they will communicate with you via email for how to solve whatever problem that it is. And with the support ticket, you are also able to upload a screenshot. We also have the Gmetrics YouTube, which is where this webinar will be housed at following the webinar. It will be added to the collection, to the already extensive collection of videos that we have there so that you can reference back to this at any time. But in addition to this webinar, we have lots of information there for you to help you out in your classroom and with your students. You learn about our amazing Gmetrics study guide, how to maximize your ROI with Gmetrics, how to use the bullet portfolio, but in test prep tips, lots of information there for you. So we will be sharing, again, this webinar will be uploaded to the Gmetrics YouTube page after the webinar. So let's talk about Gmetrics reports. As a former classroom teacher, I was a classroom teacher for 7 years. One of the things that my administration always wanted was data, data, data. All right. In addition to the providing data to the administration, it was also helpful for me to know where my students were at in regards to testing, who was ready to test, what their scores were, what their progress was on the courses. So what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to show you there are lots of Gmetrics reports available, but I'm going to focus on 2 reports that were very helpful for me and I feel will be equally helpful for you. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go to my Classrooms tab. And within your classrooms, you have reports readily available for your students. And if you're familiar with your classrooms, then you know that in classrooms, there is a lot of information. But classrooms is also where you add the content for your students to be able to access Gmetrics. All right, so within my classroom, I'm going to go over to reports. And the first thing that I'm going to see here, without doing anything, without using any of my filters, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom. And so my students, we're going to say my students are working on Microsoft right now. I'm going to open my Microsoft here. And I am going to look at, I can see my students' proficiency. My students are on hiatus, I'm sorry. My students are on winter break, okay? So please don't judge us. We are on winter break as of right now. But I'm able to see my students' proficiency. Now, one thing that you can do with this information, you can utilize this to determine if a particular student or which students are ready to take that certification exam. All right. So you have each school sets their own proficiency, their own number. I know when I taught, the students had to be 80% proficiency and they had to pass those exams with 80% or better 3 times in testing mode before we were allowed to allow them to sit for a certification exam. So you can utilize this to determine, okay, is this student at an 80% or better of proficiency that they can sit for the exam. But that's what you can utilize here. And it will show all of the students that are working within your classroom. Okay. Now we're going to add filters here. Again, with filters, you have the option of testing or training mode. I keep my filter in testing mode because testing mode is going to be the most accurate account of what your students are doing and how they're doing. Because remember, in training mode, they can go back. It gives them, after each question, they get the answer and an explanation, and then they are able to change that answer. So realistically, they could get a 100 with no effort. But testing mode, just like the certification exam, you get nothing, no feedback until the end, and you get that score report. With score filter, I keep it at the latest. You have the option of best and average. I keep it as the latest because ideally they should be getting better as they go forward. You want to check their category. You want to choose the category. I'm going to go ahead and choose my Microsoft. And then you want to choose your product. And I am going to choose my Word here. Looks like it's freezing up just a little bit. That's fine. But what's going to happen when I'm going to remove all of my filters. All right, so this is what it's going to look like once you once you do your filters. You're going to be able to see, I'll give you this, just give you a better look at it. There we go. And then I'm going to pick I've got my GS6 level 1 here. So what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing my students' scores on the GS6 practice exams. All right, I'm seeing my student scores, and this is their 98%, 7%, 100%. These are their scores on those GS6 practice exams. But I'm able to see this right within classrooms. So I could utilize this, and again, this is a printable and exportable report, and it exports into Excel, but I can utilize this to determine my student scores. If I want to export this report and upload it into my LMS, I can also do that. All right, so you have plenty of options with this report. Into your SIS, so into your gradebook, basically. You can export this report and upload those scores into your gradebook. So that's going to be the report sets that are within your classroom. Now I'm going to go over to our additional GMetrix reports and show you some really good information here. So to access those reports, I'm going to go over and I'm going to click on reports. And you have two options here. You have test tracking and create. Test tracking, you will be able to see all of the reports, all of the practice exams that your students have taken. You can do a filter for saved or finished so that you can see, okay, the student started this test, but they didn't finish it, so it's under saved. Or you can just see the finished results. All right, you can do a score filter. These filters here are not mandatory. They are not mandatory. The way this report is set up right now, you will be able to see everybody in the school's reports, their scores for the students, but you can choose a specific product for those that are in your class. If more than one teacher is teaching the same thing, you can choose your student group. This is your classroom. You can choose your classroom and only see what's happening within your classroom. All right. So those are going to be those test scores for every student within your classroom. But we're going to look at reports, and then we're going to click create. Now under create, you have test reports and course reports. I am going to give you again, I'm giving you insider information here. So I'm giving you insider information here. I wouldn't call it a secret, but it's kind of a secret. But I am going to give you the information to help you know where to focus at, to help you monitor your students, but also know where to focus at when it comes to helping your students prepare for that exam. We're going to start with the objectives breakdown report. And these objectives are aligned with the official certification exam. So those same objectives you get from the Certiport website, you're going to have the same 1.1, 1.2, the same topics, the same titles, the same objective names you're going to have on this report. And so you want to choose your start date. And I'm just going to back my start date up here to 2023 or 2024 because, again, I tell you, my students are on winter break right now. And then I have to choose a start date and end date. And just as a reminder, anything with the asterisk there is required. And then you're going to choose your product. I'm going to go ahead and choose my GS6 here. And then, your category, then you're going to choose your product. I'm just going to stay with digital literacy level 1. And then you're going to choose your test. So you will be able to see the standard tests that come with the GMetrix platform, your testing and training, practice exams 1 and 2, and then any custom exams that you have created, you're able to pull this report for those custom exams as well. And as I said, testing is going to be the most accurate account of where your students are. So I prefer to look at this report in testing. So you choose testing and you ask it to run that report. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and show you this is what the report looks like once it's pulled. This is what it looks like within the geometric system. You're going to have your objective name here, and then you will have the number of students that passed and the number of students that failed. You will have the percent of students that passed and the percent of students that failed. All right, so you can have your students take a pretest on this and then save that information and compare it later on to how they did. Like wait a month and then compare it. And then that's going to give you some good data so you will know where your students are excelling at and where they need help, but also so that you can show to your administration. But what I like to do with this, I look at the objectives that my students have failed. Okay, so if more than 70% of the class failed that objective, that is where we focus as a class. All right, if 70% of my students have failed this objective, that is where we focus. All right, because that is where my whole class needs help. And like this one, I only have one objective, analyzing funding options. That's the only objective that 69% of my students have failed. If 70% of my students are passing, we're good to go. We're good to go because as the teacher, we have to focus where the majority is. We do have some great things that allow us to that allow the students to focus on their individual areas, but as a teacher, we have to focus where the majority is. So, but that's what the report looks like within GMetrix, and then it is exportable to Excel. This is what the report is going to look like once you export it to Excel. All right, still great information, and you can utilize it in a side-by-side manner. So back to our reports, and that's our objective report. So back to our reports, the next report we're going to look at is our details report. So when we're trying to find out where the students are at in terms of the courses, in terms of our Learn Key course, how much of it they've completed, what their scores are, what they're doing, this is where we will come. We want to come to our course details report. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and click on reports. I'll click create just to show you how to get here again. And then under course reports, we're going to look at details reports. And the information you're going to choose here, you're going to choose your start date. So when did your students start this course? So you're going to put that information in and you're going to choose your end date. And you can look at this while they're in progress. It does not have to be once they have completed the course. You're going to choose your classroom. And then you're going to choose the course that you would like to look at. I'm just going to look at the intro to programming report. And what I'm going to do is this is what that report will look like within the GMetrix system. I'm going to make it, but it's going to, this is just an overview of what it's going to look like. It'll break down for each domain for each student. All right, so it'll break down for each domain. I'm sorry, let's see. Here we go. There we go. So for each domain, for each student, you're going to be able to see this report. And then it's going to tell you this is the student's score on the pre-assessment. It's going to tell you what they did. Domain 1 pre-assessment, this is their score. This is how long they took on the pre-assessment. For domain 1 for the video, this is they watched all the videos, and this is how long it took them, 112 minutes to watch all of the videos. For the lab, they received 100% on the video. On the lab, it was one question and it took them 0 minutes. So they immediately got that did. And then this is their score on the post-assessment. Now, when it comes to those pre-assessments, post-assessments, and those labs, it is interactive. So you are able to click on that and see the actual score report. All right, so you'll be able to see the actual score report and see what the students and what they answered, what was on that pre-assessment, post-assessment, and lab. And again, this is a printable and exportable report. I have opened it up here so you can kind of see everything within that report. You'll be able to see all your students. The domain 1, you'll be able to see all of your scores. how long they spent, the score they're completed, and the videos for anything within each individual domain. All right. So those are the two reports within, as I said, we have extensive reporting here within the Gmetrics system. And those are the two reports that I feel provide the most information as far as data and as far as your students' progress and where they're at and when they are ready to test for you. We do have additional reports that you are able to explore. And as I said, in our within our Gmetrics knowledge base here, if you go, we're going to put the link in here, but we're going to put the link right here in the chat for you. But within reports, we do have a breakdown of all the reports that you're going to have available for you, and it has pictures so that you can see what those reports look like. All right. Now I'm going to go to the chat and I'm going to answer questions and see what questions that we have. Okay, so I have a question here. Thank you, Alan. Are teachers able to see data from students in training mode? I know that you can see from testing mode. Absolutely, absolutely, Alan. So with the objectives breakdown report, yes, you are able to choose when you choose the test, and I'm just going to pick a test here. When you choose your test, it is available in training mode. I just prefer to see testing mode because testing mode is a true account. Also, when you're doing your test tracking, you can see, scroll down some, but you'll be able to see your students, whether they are in testing or training for that particular test. And then also in classrooms, when you are doing your filters, I'm just going to go into my classroom here. I'm going to go to reports. You do have the option to see testing or training mode. You do have the option to choose testing or training mode. Great question. Thank you so much, Alan. All right, so the question, okay, Alan has another question. Where is the best place to submit problems with questions to Gmetrics that are not working correctly? All right, so when you see a problem with a question that's not working correctly, the best way to submit that is here on the Gmetrics support page at support.gmetrics.net. And you are able to, if you click new support ticket, you're able to put that information in here. What you want to make sure that you do is put in the question ID number. When you are in the practice exam, there will be a question ID number. If you look at the top left side of the question, it says question ID. Make sure you add that question ID number so that we can know which question it is that you are speaking of. And they did also put in the link so that you can see how to locate that question ID number. That link is also there available for you in that chat. All right. Are there any more questions? We have a few minutes left here. Are there any more questions that anyone has? While we're waiting to see if there are any questions, again, following the webinar, this webinar will be available to you on the Gmetrics YouTube page. You will also be receiving an email with the file, the PDF with the reports information on it. And that PDF shows you, it tells you what reports we have available. It tells you about the two reports that we went over tonight, shows you how to access those, and it has some great tips on the bottom of it. Also in the chat, you'll notice there is a link to our webinar page. The Gmetrics webinar page, we do have these webinars the first Wednesday of every month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Mountain, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Mountain. we do have our webinars page where you are able to see our upcoming webinars, and you are able to sign up to register for those webinars so that you can, and then, before the webinar, about an hour before the webinar, you'll get a reminder that you have registered so that you may join us here on the webinar. And I will check one more time. Let's see, are there any other questions? I do not. Okay. All right. I do not see any other questions. All right. If there are no other questions, I do appreciate you all for joining us here today. One thing I did, we are having another webinar in March. It's going to be Who is G-Metrix? And in this webinar on March the 5th, we will discuss who G-Metrix is, what we have available, and what the impact and the power of our platform. Make sure that you go ahead to our webinars page and that you register for that webinar. And I hope to see you all there. But there are no more questions. Thank you all so much for joining us, and have a wonderful evening. Can you demonstrate? I'm sorry, I have a question. Helena, can you demonstrate how to make a report on one student and show the time they have spent in the month working in G-Metrix? All right. So we will go back to our admin dashboard, and we will go to reports, and we will go to create. And so so you can see how much the student has used the course specifically. There's one report that will tell you how much they have used the course over the month, and that's going to be the course usage report or the student progress report. Either of these will show, and it'll show for all your students, and you can use the information for that, pull the information for that specific student. Now, when it comes to the actual practice exams, it doesn't break the information down for the actual practice exams, but you're able to go to student test results, and you're able to see within student test results, you're able to see all the test results for all your students, and then you can filter for that particular student. But I'm going to show you one more thing, and it's not going to show you the whole like a breakdown or a total amount of time that the student spent, but you are going to be able to see everything the student did. So what I did, I went over to students. I'm gonna go back. I went over to students, and then I chose my student. I clicked on details here, and then I'm going to be able to go to my student transcript. And within my student transcript, I'm able to see everything that my student has did. And then it tells me how much time they spent. It tells me their score on the exam and how much time they spent on the exam. And this is printable. This is printable. And then when it comes to courses as well, it's going to give you the student's progress on the course. Like here, the student completed 32% of the course, and they spent 3 hours completing that 32% of the course. All right, but it's going to give you that information. And then one more thing, when you're looking at the score reports, when you're looking at the transcript, and say you're looking at they got a 742, they spent 37 minutes on it. This again is interactive, so you can click on this and you're able to see the actual score report, and you're able to see the breakdown of what the student did and the questions that they missed and those that they got right. This is the same information that the student sees. Is that helpful for you, Helena? All right. All right. So that was a bit more information there. All right. Are there any additional questions? All right. If there are no additional questions, again, thank you all so much for joining us, and have a good evening. And I hope to see you on March the 5th.